Hey everybody, it's Dan. I've got this great video on how to spot people who are being deceptive and lying, and I think it would be great tools to have in an urban survival setting or a bugged out setting if you run into people, being able to understand how their bodies are working, body language and how their eyes are, their tone of voice, that type of thing. So I wanted to share that with you guys. As always, I look forward to seeing your comments below. Hit that thumbs up button, that subscribe button if you like the videos. And until next time, guys, take care of each other. So let's get started with this video.
Lip swallowing, that sort of sucking your lips inwards, tends to accompany thinking and uncertainty, especially when the outcome might be bad. But lip compression that you're seeing here, what you might describe as buttoning the lip, is an indicator of lying, and possibly, because it's a little bit psychoanalytic, but the idea is that it might represent a need to control the possibility that you will burst out with something that you would much prefer people did not know, in much the same way as a child will put their hand over their mouth. I must not say what the truth is because I'll be in terrible trouble. The so-called Pinocchio effect is that, according to these American psychiatrists, Hirsch and Wolf, the nose contains erectile tissue. It may be something to do with the defense system against viruses carried in the air, but it does tend to become engorged with psychological stress as well as physical stress. And they did a study in which they looked at the tapes of Bill Clinton denying having sex with Monica Lewinsky and observed that he tended to touch his nose more frequently at times that were later discovered to be untruths. It's an interesting thing. Actually, I looked into the web to find a picture of Clinton touching his nose during the Lewinsky episode, and it just doesn't exist. I don't know where the researchers found it. I have to take their word for it, but I'm wondering if Bill Clinton's people have somehow managed to expunge all images that might be used to illustrate this point, because it's become such a popular idea. Voice stress analysis. There are various applications for your phone and computer that will supposedly detect people lying through tiny little tremors in their voice and perhaps a higher pitch than usual. And unfortunately, it would be great if it worked, because you could tell when somebody's lying to you down the telephone, or on a tape-recorded interviews could be analysed for voice stress later. Here's an illustration of one such system. That's the actual frequency of the voice, and this is the analysis of the stress in parallel with it. Unfortunately, it does not come out very well in the empirical research which tries to validate it. For example, they will look at voice stress in drug users denying the charge of taking drugs, and compare it with a urine analysis of whether they had actually been taking performance-enhancing drugs or indeed any other recreational drugs as well. And they tend to show voice stress as having no validity at all. It's little better than chance in detecting people lying about the use of drugs. At best, it will detect stress rather than lying specifically. But however, like the polygraph, it might just prompt a confession in somebody that they need not otherwise have offered. Now here's a technology that thermal imaging, which has been around at airports to detect fever. You know, in the days of the bird flu, if you go through Singapore airport or something, they will have cameras on you, and if they decide that you've got this dreaded bird flu, they probably wouldn't let you on the plane. And there have been attempts to see whether it would be useful to the customs and immigration people to detect false stories in the people that are coming through. The particular study that I'm referring to had volunteers who would go through an immigration point, and some would give a lying story about what their intention was as they came into the country, and others would be telling the truth. And the question is, could they tell them apart? And the answer is yes. There's a tendency to heat up around below the eyes, each side of the nose here. There's the nose, and the eyes are in there somewhere. And this area just around the eyes tends to get hotter in people who are lying compared with their situation before they went through. People telling the truth show no change in the temperature of the face in that particular area. And it was found that they could correctly diagnose about 2/3 of the experimental subjects. However, at the same time, the interviewers were doing judgments, just impressionistic judgments of whether people were lying or telling the truth, and they were right about 3/4 of the time. So, and more than that, the thermal imaging was not adding any predictive power to the judges' or interviewers' judgments. So you're left thinking that it's not a very useful technology at the moment. It might develop further. It does have one advantage over the interviewer judgments, of course, which is that it can be totally automated. You can have this camera sort of on people's faces as they come through immigration or customs, and it can be signaling to the interviewer that maybe this is somebody that needs a further grilling. Now, of course, lies originate in the brain, so the polygraph is working on peripheral physiology, but there is the possibility that you might get closer to the source of the lie with brain imagery. And the theory is that if you're telling a lie, you simply have to access memory, which might be in the parietal lobe area. But if you are lying, the task is a great deal more complicated. You've got to first of all suppress the truth, and then you've got to conjure something, an imaginary scenario that you're going to tell. And hence the idea, the theory is that the lying will engage the frontal lobes of the brain more. And claims of about 90% accuracy have been made for this approach. Here's one particular experiment showing that the red is the area that is more active in the liars than the truth tellers, and vice versa for the blue. And you can see that it's the frontal areas of the brain which give away, activation there gives away the deception. But again, it has not been widely adopted as a lie detection technique for a number of reasons. One is it's extremely expensive, it's extremely cumbersome. You'd need a very good reason to stick somebody in an fMRI scanner. And it's also been found that it's not totally immune to cheating. By the same procedure that the polygraph can be beaten, which is to self-stimulate during the neutral condition. That is, think of something horrible, like shooting your girlfriend through the bathroom door or something at the time that they are presenting neutral stimuli to you. So it may not be as immune to cheating as the original proponents might have hoped. Now there is, most courtrooms do not accept any of these lie detection procedures as a valid form of evidence, but India has proved to be an exception. There was this case in a Mumbai courtroom back in 2008 in which this couple were convicted of conspiring to poison her fiancé, get him out of the way, by slipping arsenic into his McDonald's. She consented to have her EEG recorded. They were looking at a particular evoked response, which is called the P300. It is a positive potential occurring 300 milliseconds after the critical stimulus, about a third of a second later. And if that shows activation to statements or items which only a guilty person would react to, then it might betray lying. And in this instance, the court and the judge agreed that it showed what they called experiential knowledge, that she was reacting to things that an innocent person would not be expected to show an exaggerated response to. I think there must have been other evidence as well, incidentally. I don't think that that was the sole reason for the conviction. At least I wouldn't like to think so. But in any case, these two were convicted. And the only other cases I know where this kind of evidence has been admitted are in India so far. Now, going beyond body language, there are many people who believe that it is the things that you say that are more important than the way that you are looking. Your speech patterns tend to change when you're lying. An increase in repetitions, undue emphasis and hesitations, and lots of ums and ers. Liars tend to start their answers a bit later, unless they're very well prepared in what they're going to say, in which case it's been observed that they will actually start it too soon. The pace is generally slower, which gives them more time to construct a story. Generally they talk less, so that they give you fewer facts and details that could be cross-checked, particularly those that are close to the crime itself. And they usually come across as negative and uncooperative in their testimony. Now, the actual choice of words may also be diagnostic. Guilty people tend to use very oblique rather than direct denials. They say things like, "I'm trying to tell you the truth." The difficulty is that they can't, because it would be rather incriminating. They tend to use tentative words like maybe, guess, perhaps, sort of avoiding commitment to the story that they're giving. O.J. Simpson, when his ex-wife was first discovered stabbed to death, he went on the run, pursued by a whole entourage of police cars, and they were having a conversation with him on his mobile phone as he was being chased. And they said, "O.J., throw the gun out the window. Nobody needs to get hurt." And he said, "I'm the only one who deserves to die," which, of course, in retrospect, is a confession. So studying closely what people say can tell you quite a bit.